All right, guys, I'm here at one of the washes. I got a brand new Pro Water LT. It's one of our Kleen-rite spot-free machines, production machines. I'm gonna install this today. You guys can walk through it with me, and I'll kind of guide you through how to get this done in a pretty quick manner. My situation might be a little bit different than yours, but if you follow the steps and still do the steps in the same order, you'll be able to get this installed yourself in pretty quick time. So let's dive into it. So I got the stand in the wash. You can see that it's rocking a little bit. Obviously my floor isn't perfectly level. That's how most floors are, unless you're lucky and your floor is completely level. There's not a lot of rock, but we still want our equipment to be level and secure. So I'm rocking this way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push up and I'm gonna lower this foot a couple turns. It just spins out. And most of that rock's already gone. I can see I got a little rock back here. I'm gonna spin that guy out. And just a little more on this front one. And I'm feeling good about that. All right, so I got my spot picked out, stands leveled. You're probably saying to yourself, Phil, where's your holding tank at? The holding tank is on the back side of this wall in another room. So we're actually gonna send our good spot-free water through the wall into that tank, and we'll get into that. Right now, I picked this position because if you look here, I have my softener. The system comes with a carbon filter. I'm gonna set that carbon filter here, and then we're gonna go straight into the pre-filter. So before I move that carbon filter in, I wanna get as many fittings onto this thing as I can so that I don't have to work over top of everything, right? We're gonna plan this out to make it as easy as possible. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get my 3/4 MPT by 3/4 barb in here. All right, guys, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about things I can give you tips on. I'm gonna show you how to wrap a pipe fitting the right way, right? So I was taught by a pipe fitter that if you always hold the fitting you're wrapping in your left hand, and you always hold the tape in your right hand coming off of the top of the spool, right? We're gonna get that tape on, hold it with our finger, and if you wrap away from you, right, you'll be wrapping the tape in the right direction, so that when you're done, right, we're gonna pull that off. The tag end, or the end of where you just ripped that tape off, when you spin this in the fitting, you're gonna be spinning it with the way that you wrap the tape on, and it will not peel off as you spin it into the thread. So I'm gonna hop over here and just spin that guy in, and you can see I'm going with the way the tape was wrapped, and it's already starting to get tight. I'll put a wrench on that here in a second. Out of my softener, that's a 1-inch MPT, and the head of the carbon filter is 1-inch MPT. So I'm going, I always try to match the pipe size with the size hose that I'm running, right? What's that do for us? That's gonna guarantee that we get the amount of flow to the device that the manufacturer wants, right? We want 1 inch of water flow, 1-inch pipe, 1-inch tubing of water flow going to that carbon filter head so that we can get enough water into that carbon filter and then enough water out of it into this system so that we can make the 7,200 gallons per day that this system is sized for. So 1-inch MPT, 1-inch barb, I'm going right into my softener head. Now these softeners were rebedded not that long ago, and I know that they're in good shape. They might look a little rough, but I know that they work well, so I am not changing those out at this site at the moment. We're just getting this new RO system in. All right, guys, before I move this carbon filter in, I need to get access to the on-off float, or our fill float, to actually kick the production unit on. That's already wired in to the control box back here. I'm just gonna snip that loose. I actually have to unwire it because my tank's on the other side of the wall. But if your tank was right next to your stand, obviously if you did a drop through fitting, you could just drop that right in your tank if you have to unwire it, this will be a good way to show you how to do that as well. So I'm gonna hop in here, cut this free. That way I can get it out of here. And then I'm gonna hop into this cabinet. All right, I'm in the controller, and I know that my float is wired right here to the terminals labeled high level, which is what's gonna kick that pump off, the production pump off. So I'm just gonna undo those two terminal screws, take off that, and I'll be able to slide it right down and out. Last thing I need to do before I get the carbon filter in here is I need to get this thing powered up. Now, when we send these out, they come with a nice twist lock plug. My previous outlet was not a twist lock plug. I've verified power here that I have no power on it, and I'm actually just going to hardwire it in instead of putting an outlet in. If you are unfamiliar with power, so on and so forth, I do recommend you get a certified electrician to take care of that for you. If you are good with that, you could hardwire it in. You could also change the outlet out. I'm choosing to just hardwire this in directly. All right, guys, so I got this hardwired in. I'm gonna get the carbon filter ready now and roll that over. We'll get the head installed, get the fittings on it, and then we'll get everything plumbed up. Here's the head mechanism. And before I actually get this on here, we'll just go over this quick. We're gonna have our in and our out. We have two on and off valves. If you needed to bypass this for some reason, you can shut both these valves off and the water will just go through in and then right out and not actually go through the filter itself if you needed to service it or something like that. And then what you're gonna see here, this is the regen port. And when the filter is flushing itself, there's going to be some wastewater that happens. So as you're placing this equipment in the room, that is something to be mindful. You're going to have some wastewater or that flush water coming out of here. And, just plan ahead for that. So let's get this head installed. We're going to have to pull this yellow blocker cap off. And then the head itself, this cone is going to slip down over top of this pipe. And then we're just going to spin this down in. All right, guys, so this already has 90s on it. I'm actually installing 2 more 90s so I can get everything, all my hoses kind of ran pretty straight without a bunch of bends into it. So I got 2 1-inch Schedule 80 PVC 90s here. I'm just going to spin those directly on to the fitting of the head. Once I have those tight, we want to be sure to support the head while we're tightening those on so that you don't snap any fittings off. I'm going to get these pointed in the direction that I want them. So up and up. All right, now I have my in. My in is going to be 1 inch. Coming from the softeners is 1 inch. So I'm going to get that rigged up. And then my out, because we're going into the blue filter with 3/4, my out is going to be a 3/4. So obviously I put a 1 inch 90 on there. I got a 3/4 by 3/4, and then I have a 1 inch by 3/4 reducing bushing. Get all this taped up. What you can notice here, if you get confused on which one is your in and which one is your out, on the top of the head here, there's 2 arrows. One is pointing into the unit and one is pointing out. That is how you know where to hook your inlet and your outlet up to. These do come off. If you're worried that you're going to break it, you can just pop them off and do this by hand out here. just slides right back in. All right, now that I have these where I want them, I'm going to tighten these down as well. All right, so I'm going to roll this back into position. Now you do need a 120 volt outlet for this guy, which I have back here for the plug that's on the back right here. And then the second thing we want to be mindful of is this TDS meter wire. This needs to land into this cabinet. So there's a good amount of wire here. We just want to be mindful that we don't try to put the filter across the room and then this here, because we do need to get that wire into this box for the meter to work correctly. So now I'm going to hook up my 1 inch to 1 inch, and then we will get the 3/4 over to the filter. Actually, put that guy on a little backwards. I'm going to swing that around. All right, so I'm going to make my 1 inch connection from barb to barb. I got some 1 inch hose here. Just going to cut a new straight end on that. Kind of map out how long I want that to be. And we'll see, I always cut it a little long. That way if I need to trim some, I can, which I know I will. And get this first connection and then see how that lays out. I actually don't like the way that that's going to go, so I'm going to switch these. And that I do like. So, get this guy on. Take some of the tension off of that. Get this positioned. All right, so I got my 1 inch inlet connected. I'm gonna put some hose clamps on here once I get this outlet connected. I got some 3/4 inch hose. Got my hose cutter here. Gonna get that cut. I just want to show you guys this. You see how I have a hard bend in this hose, and this is what they call kinking a hose over. This is actually restricting the flow greatly to this unit. So we want to be mindful when we're hooking this hose up, or if you're hooking tubing up to anything, you're not putting any really hard bends like this on it, or you're going to end up restricting the flow to whatever you're sending that product or water to. All right, so I'm connected to the filter. I'm gonna get my line out of the carbon filter run. I'm gonna leave myself a little extra just in case I need to move this at any point. And I'm gonna make sure that I don't have any big kinks in this. Okay. So to finish this out, I'm gonna plug the head in. All right, so we got the inlet to the filter hooked up, the outlet of the filter hooked to our 5 micron filter. I have an old washer dryer hose here. I'm gonna use that as my flush hose, and I'm routing that right to the ground. I have a drain right here in the center of the floor. And I will just loop this back and zip tie it nice so that that just drains onto the floor, and then it's gonna head to that drain, since I don't have a drain right back here where this is sitting. Okay, we are going to now get that sensor wire that I was talking about routed over. So that sensor that's coming from the carbon filter head, we're gonna come right through this provided cable gland that's already in the box. So I'm gonna route this wire over, slide it in through there, tighten that down, and then get it wired in. So we leave a long wire coming from the carbon filter head to come into the box, the control box, and we're gonna wire that to the pre-treat terminals in this box. Now, I did not cut this wire down. I just used some zip ties and zip tied it up in a coil back here. I recommend you do the same thing just in case you have to make a change later down the road or something happens, you have that extra wire back there. You can still keep it nice and tidy with some zip ties and a nice coil and not have to completely cut all that wire away. So I'm just stripping that outside coating off. And then we're gonna have our two wires in here, our red and our black. And where we're going is we're going to E22 and E21. You can see we're black and red. I'm gonna hook this up the same exact way, the same color coordination, strip a little back, strip a little back. Always like to trim them the same length. Perfect. You can see I don't have any of that copper sticking out of the bottom. It's going straight up and in. I don't have any stray wires sticking out of those terminals. We don't want those two wires coming together. That's going to mess our signal up. And I'm just going to leave that right like that. All right, so we got the carbon head for the pre-treat signal for our TDS hooked up to the board. Now it's time to get that float installed. I got my new float. I got my weight set for about close to where I want it. I'm going to give it a little bigger run than what I had before. You want to set the weight for about the on and off swing point. So what I'm saying to you is the weight is going to hold the float down in. The float will come up with the water and shut off. It'll come down with the water and turn on. These are my old marks, so I'm going to set it as close to that as I can. I might have to adjust it later after we get the system running. But for now, this will get us going in the right direction. All right. So, got the cable gland installed. That's how we're going to hold this in place. When we lock this down, that crimps or tightens down onto the wire itself. And now I'm going to pull my float and weight up into position. And my goal is to get that weight, if you can see it here through the tank maybe, about halfway in between my on and off line. Now, like I said, my on and off are going to be spread a little bit bigger so that I can let that system run longer instead of just coming on and off. Okay. Now I'm going to feed this wire, like I said, back through the hole in the wall that I have here. And we'll hop to the other side and we'll get this wired up. So we got the float in the tank, wires through the wall. I'm going to get it back into the box here. I'm going right back in that cable gland that I took it out of on the bottom. And then we're going to get this landed right back where it was. Remember, we removed that off of that high level. So that's E24 and E23 on the circuit board. So I'm just going to get those wired right back in to their respective spots. And it was the blue and the black wire. The brown wire was not wired in. And remember, we want to have those good clean connections into that circuit board, no frays sticking out, jumping across each other. All right. That came with a wire nut on that brown wire. We want to make sure that we put that wire nut back on that brown wire. Okay, so we are finished in the control box. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. I got the permeate flow or your good RO spot-free water connection here. I got the tube through the wall going to the tank. And all we got to do is loosen this up, slide that the whole way down in, tighten that down, and we are good to go. All right, guys, so now we're at the point where we need to deal with the concentrate flow. Everybody deals with the concentrate flow differently. Some people put it directly down the drain. My opinion is we're wasting water at that point. We want to conserve as much water as possible. Water is money. So right next to the Pro Water LT is my high pressure pump system for the tunnel here at the car wash. I am actually going to pipe this directly into that tank and let it fill that tank when it can. And when the tank doesn't actually need water, at that point, I'm going to allow the high pressure stand tank to just overflow. That way I can try to capture as much of this water as possible. So I'm just going to pop a hole in the side of the tank here with a unibit. And we're going to do the same thing we did before with our spot-free water. Again, that's 1/2-inch poly tubing. I'm going to poke that right through that hole. And I left that hole tight enough that it would hold this tubing fast. I'm going to get a decent length on that. Into that same style compression fitting on the back. Now you can see that I left that a little long, and I am going to just push the rest into the tank. And there we go. All right, guys, that's going to close out this install for the Pro Water LT. It took us roughly about 2 hours to do it. Not a big undertaking, as long as you're somewhat prepared with all the fittings, hose, things like that. If you have any questions about RO, spot-free, what size system you need, or how to hook one up, give us a call at Kleen-rite and we'll get you fixed up.
Kleen-rite.